To take another look at some of the reports about the Pentagon that have come out over the last week in particular. Here's one article from Zero Hedge. They summarize some of the most recent information. Main thing being that the Pentagon is about to undergo its first ever audit. It's just about to undergo its first ever audit after decades of sloppy accounting and missing trillions of dollars as well. This has been known, the missing trillions goes back to at least Donald Rumsfeld. Cynthia McKinney questioned Donald Rumsfeld in a video that I've actually spoken about in a previous video. There's also some pretty startling news about reports that over 44,000 unknown troops, their location unknown, missing troops around the world are untracked by the Pentagon. Pentagon cannot track them and says that they don't know where they are. This is what the public is now being told, at least. This was the article from Zero Hedge. They summarize a little bit more detail. They say after decades of waste, overpayments, trillions of missing or improperly accounted for dollars, and most recently losing track of 44,000 U.S. soldiers, the Pentagon's about to undergo its first audit in history, conducted by over 2,000 auditors from independent public accounting firms to conduct interviews across the Army, Navy, Air Force, and more. It's followed by annual audits going forward, is what they're saying is going to happen in the future. This announcement follows a May commitment by Pentagon Comptroller David Norquist, who previously served as the CFO at the Department of Homeland Security when the agency performed its audit. It's a quote from Norquist. He says, "Starting an audit is a matter of driving change inside a bureaucracy that may resist it." The Pentagon, it seems they have been pretty much playing by their own rules. Unclear whether this is really going to make them more accountable or if these other auditors are actually just going to go in and just as possible that they're going to help them hide their tracks, I guess, for some of this missing money. The Department of Defense had a release where they said the audit is massive. It will examine every aspect of the department, from personnel to real property, to weapons, to supplies, to bases. Some 2,400 auditors will fan out across the department to conduct it. This is what Pentagon officials have said. Another quote from Norquist, he says, "It is important that the Congress and the American people have confidence in the Department of Defense's management of every taxpayer dollar." Pentagon is no stranger to criticism over serious waste and purposefully sloppy accounting. A Department of Defense Inspector General's report from 2016, which appears to be unavailable on the Department of Defense website now, although it was archived from when it was previously posted, they found that in 2015 alone, a staggering $6.5 trillion just in 2015. 6.5 trillion in funds was unaccounted for out of the Army's budget, with 2.8 trillion in, quote, wrongful adjustments occurring in just one quarter. In 2015, the Pentagon denied trying to shelve a study detailing $125 billion in waste created by a bloated employee counts for non-combat related work such as human resources, finance, healthcare management, and property management. The report concluded that $125 billion could be saved by making those operations more efficient. They remind us on September 10th of 2001, Secretary of Defense at the time, Donald Rumsfeld, had announced that according to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions. This was on September 10th, 2001, and this came after a Pentagon whistleblower set off a probe. Of course, a day later, the September 11th attacks happened, and the accounting scandal was quickly, conveniently for the Pentagon, forgotten. 20 years before that, Department of Defense analyst Franklin Spinney exposed what he called accounting games, saying, quote, "Those numbers are pie in the sky. The books are cooked routinely year after year." In a 2002 testimony before the House Committee on Government Reform, he laid out the Department of Defense's accounting quagmire of unauditable books and budget projections which don't match reality. There's some really bizarre spending from the Pentagon, or their reports. They point back to in the 1980s, where there was a bombshell report on overpayments the Pentagon made for simple items such as $37 screws, $7,600 coffee makers, $640 toilet seats, which Senator William Roth Jr. was able to whittle down to $200. Finally, they say the announcement of the audit comes amid a looming government shutdown battle, which has given a 2-week extension last week until December 22nd. If this occurs, military personnel would report to work as usual, but the Department of Defense would not pay them until the shutdown ends. Finally, Norquist, one last quote from Norquist. He says, "I cannot emphasize too much how destructive a shutdown is. We've talked before about the importance of maintenance on weapons systems and others, but if it's not an expected activity, there will be work stoppage on many of those maintenance functions. With both parties standing to lose more than gain from a shutdown, that is unlikely to happen. Meanwhile, with decades of lost confidence in the Pentagon's accounting practices, we eagerly await the results of this massive audit, as they're describing it, and see how much dirt and where the previous administrations have swept under the rug." A lot of people, I think, are probably less hopeful that we will get those sorts of answers. I do think it's just as likely that these auditors are going to be working on the side of the Pentagon to just help them cover some of their tracks over some of this lost money. And again, these over 44,000 missing unknown troops. This was another article. I have both linked in the description of this video. Just read the intro from this, where they talk about 44,000 military personnel across the globe that the Pentagon is claiming it cannot track, according to a recent report. Rob Manning, a Pentagon spokesman, said, "We are not at a point where we can give numbers other than those officially stated." The report, compiled by the Defense Manpower Data Center, this was under the Office of the Secretary of Defense. It shows that more than 44,000 personnel are in a category labeled unknown. Active duty military personnel numbers slightly more than 1.3 million in the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force, and hundreds of thousands more civilian personnel fall under defense departments. That number does not include Reserve and National Guard formations that might be active at any particular time. The U.S. has military personnel in nearly every country in the world, they say, ranging from as little as 2 officers in Fiji to tens of thousands from all of the service branches in Japan and Germany. Now, Manning said during a press briefing Wednesday that troop numbers in Syria are about 4 times higher than reported by the Pentagon. It's a pretty big discrepancy, with 2,000 present in the country. He also clarified that there are over 5,000 in Iraq, up over 5,200 in Iraq, up from about 5,000 reported earlier. He says, "We seek to balance informing the American public with the imperative of operational security and denying the enemy any advantage," Manning said at the briefing. Sounds like an excuse for lying to the public from Manning. He says, I have another quote from him further in this article. They do say the Pentagon's previous number of troops in Syria was 503, though the additional 1,500 acknowledged Wednesday is small compared to the size of Department of Defense's manpower. You have over 246,000 in California alone, according to the data center. Such discrepancies could explain why 44,000 are unaccounted for. This other quote from Manning, he says, "Our commitment is to be as transparent as we can within the constraints of operational security. Pentagon has acknowledged in a statement that it has no good way." This is what they're telling us, at least. They are saying they have no good way to track how many service members are stationed overseas, where they are, and when they were there. Not sure that I buy that, but that's what we're being told. Finally, another quote reads, "There is no one personnel system in the Defense Department that tracks the daily location of all Defense Department personnel. There is no easy way to track all deployments, training exercises, TDYs, training or specific missions, typically for less than 6 months, or temporary assignments. According to the statement they released, they also say if you take the total numbers assigned in the United States and assigned overseas and add the unknown, you get the total force numbers of each. However, another Pentagon spokesman questioned the value of data center numbers, saying those numbers are not meant to represent any accurate accounting of troops currently deployed to any location. They should not be relied upon for a current picture of what's going on. Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis ordered a review of how personnel are counted in Afghanistan and elsewhere, saying there's a very strange accounting procedure I inherited. What I'm probably going to end up doing is putting everyone into one thing and saying, hey, how many are really there now? Mattis said during a news conference in August in response to this. So I'm not sure that I, again, totally believe some of those statements from the Department of Defense, that this is just completely missing money and missing troops. It's just a result of bad accounting practices and bad practices in tracking their own personnel. Thinking a lot of people would buy more into the idea that this is intentional, that these funds are being used for something that the Pentagon doesn't want to tell us. Cynthia McKinney actually tweeted about this story. I saw a message from her, and she, if you haven't seen this video of Cynthia McKinney, I believe if you YouTube search Cynthia McKinney grills Donald Rumsfeld, it's that video. It's about a 5-minute video where she calls out the contracts given to DynCorp, which is an NGO. It's continually given money by the United States government. It's been caught human trafficking. They have literally been caught trafficking women and children, and they've been rewarded continually by the United States government. Former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney had questioned Donald Rumsfeld about this, as well as these missing trillions of dollars. Donald Rumsfeld deflected, basically covering up for the company, and the company, DynCorp, covered up for the employees. No one was really held accountable, and again, they're still receiving money. You have to wonder if some of this money is being used for those purposes, perhaps. Cynthia McKinney also made some reference to the recent Hollywood, some of the scandals going on in Hollywood, saying that she believes that's not a distraction, that it is all connected back to the Pentagon. These missing trillions of dollars might be worth, again, just mentioning one of the most disturbing reports about the Harvey Weinstein scandal, where they found evidence that he had hired a team of private investigators, which included ex-Mossad agents. These are from the Israeli intelligence agents, basically. They worked for Black Cube, I believe. So this is the deep state. So, I mean, Weinstein literally hired ex-deep state agents, is what we're being told, for a private investigation. But is this part of a broader scandal that is going on? Why is this being exposed right now? The scandals going on in Hollywood, along with, at the same time, this news about the Pentagon breaking, definitely could be a connection there as well. I have links to all the articles, to all of these reports in the description of this video, as well as a link to my Patreon account. Just a reminder, I'm on patreon.com/realityreader. Thank you everyone that has donated there. It just gives me some extra time and resources to put back on the channel and keep reporting on these issues. I also have a link to my steemit blog. If you're on steemit, you can follow me on there. I would greatly appreciate it. You can also sign up. I think it takes about a day to sign up. It's basically a blog similar to Reddit. I post reports with additional information on all the topics that I cover, and you can leave me comments there, and you actually get rewarded with, they have some form of cryptocurrency. I won't go into too much detail about steemit, but it's interesting, and you can actually help me out just by following me there and commenting on those posts as well. So I have a link to that in the description. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. If you could leave a like on this video, it's greatly appreciated. I will check back shortly. Thanks, everyone.